everyone, welcome to a new episode of In Other Words with Danielle and Zara.
So this is a podcast where we talk about a wide variety of different subjects, from things that we're grateful for to healthy habits, which is not what we're talking about today. So in other words, we talk about all the things. So for today's local brand, I want to promote the Greenhouse Shop. On Instagram, they are the Greenhouse Shop SA, so check them out. They are based in Joostenburg-Vlakte, and they sell really awesome plants, like local plants, exotic plants, all the things. All the plants. It's very cool, so I would definitely check them out.
Awesome. And if you see plants in the background of every episode, it's because Danielle is a plant enthusiast.
Yes, but also this is my mother's house, so
this is true. They are both. Okay, so today we are not talking about plants. Today we have a special guest.
Ooh, special.
It's very special.
So special. Yeah, are you special, Clive? His name is Clive. And Clive, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yes, I am Clive, as you heard.
What?
Yeah, it's true. You got the name right. And I'm married. I have a newly born child. Yes. That's
Wow.
how we describe it.
She is a child.
She is like 3 weeks and a few days.
She's beautiful.
She's beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
So
Must
she
have been all
fills,
Courtney.
she fills all the gaps where you would normally have sleep, but with joy.
Oh, lovely.
You have to
there's
say
no
that, eh?
sleep, but there's a lot of joy.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast, especially for today's topic.
Mm-hmm.
Danielle, do you want to introduce the topic?
All right, so today we're talking about pornography. It's a big one. So yeah, I don't know how long this episode is going to be,
Also,
but we'll find
Clive
out.
tends to talk a lot.
Yeah,
So stay tuned though, because the things he says are most of the time relevant.
most of the time.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Do
Cool.
you just want to get into like your experience with porn, all of that? Okay.
Cool. So obviously being a young teenager, your hormones start to go through the roof. And basically for me, it started when I was in grade 7. And in grade 7, the guy came to school and he had his dad's porn magazine. And it's the first time I've actually seen a proper porn thing. So then I was like, I saw it and I was like, okay, that's weird. It kind of moved away from the guys. I was like, okay, I'm not really interested. But then slowly but surely, with my hormones spiking and interest, I started to experiment, if you could say that, and start to dabble in the world of porn. And from that moment on, it was just like a snowball effect where there's not even like certain markers where you can just be like, oh, it's from this, this, and that. It's just from that first moment of being exposed to it and just starting to really kind of not experiment, kind of try to seek it out and know more about it. And my interest was spiked. And from that moment on, it just snowballed. And I was pretty much just, right from the get-go, I'd say, I was pretty much addicted to pornography and engaging with that pretty much all the way through until out of high school, early years as a young adult. Really, it just became a thing that took over my life. And it was something that was a guilt thing because it filled me with like guilt and shame. But it was just something I felt like I just couldn't escape. And also for a long time I felt that this was like my personal journey. It's not something I can speak to people about. It's something that like I'm the one who's dealing with it. It's something that I have to try and deal with by myself, and it's a me thing. It's not an anyone else thing. And from that, so from then I was pretty much addicted. And then it was, there came to a moment where I just broke down and I put things in place and I just, tried to put it behind me. And even after that, there were times of relapse. But also one thing I want to say is that the struggles with pornography and the temptations of pornography never go away. So it's not like, oh no, you just because you don't, okay, I don't know if you can use words. But like...
You can use words.
Okay, but like...
Also, I think we probably should have started this episode with just like a trigger warning.
Yes.
But I feel like if you are a teenager, you should still know these things.
Yes. But like, so just for example, like just because you don't physically act and masturbate on this pornography anymore doesn't mean the temptation's not there. And so there's always these little triggers that would pop up here and there that I have to safeguard myself from, even to this day, because the triggers are always there, the temptation's always there. But the challenge is acting or not acting upon those things. But it was a massive part. I think it was my single greatest struggle, should I say, in my life, just really trying to get through it all on my own until I spoke up and actually spoke to people about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting though is that so for you it was like this dark, shameful thing, and I think especially for Christians, like the amount of Christians that struggle with pornography versus non-Christians is pretty much the same. The numbers are the same.
Yeah.
But I think on the one hand it's like a very, like, no one talks about it and it's very shameful, but then there's also this culture that it's a very normal thing.
Yeah.
And that's actually the one thing I never enjoyed about Friends is how
normalized it
you're
is.
even praised at certain points.
Yeah.
Pornography
It's made just to be
was.
like, oh, this funny thing that guys do.
Yes.
You know?
So yeah, I think it's quite interesting that people have these different views
And
of
it's
it.
hectic because like when you, like obviously growing up in a church and being a believer, you know that it's wrong to do these things, but there's almost this culture of this is such a shameful thing to do, and it's seen as this is such a disgusting act, it's such a horrible thing, so it fills you with shame and guilt that it actually prevented me from wanting to actually speak to people.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Because I felt like if I do speak to someone about this, I'm going to be seen as disgusting. I'm the one who's going to be shameful. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like, in the meantime, I mean, I still did a workshop on the one camp about breaking the silence and saying, you know what, we're all struggling with this stuff,
Yeah.
women and guys alike,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we need to speak about it. That's the only way we can really overcome it.
Yes.
But because it's seen as such a horrible thing and a disgusting thing, it's like, no, it's just something I must work out. No one
Yeah.
else can help me. When actually
Yeah.
it's, you need just as much support about that.
Yeah.
I mean, people are willing to speak about things like swearing or drinking, and like, they're willing to open up about those struggles,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
not this one, because this is like,
It's very personal.
yeah.
Yes.
So it's just shameful in the sense of that this is the culture that we have, when actually pretty much everyone struggles with it.
Exactly.
So it's something we should be more open about and talking about,
Yeah.
because then it'll be easier. But obviously, yeah, we don't want to make it this culture of acceptance of,
No.
yeah, everyone does it, it's fine. Because
fine.
obviously we
No.
don't want to.
No.
But there should be an openness to talk about
Yeah.
it and
Yeah.
not be judged and have guilt put upon you. Yeah.
I must say, I remember that workshop specifically. I think I was like grade 8 or something like that, young. But I just remember being like so surprised because I was never introduced into that kind of world. Like I've never watched porn or anything like that. And I'm really grateful for that. But I was so surprised that there were like almost equal amounts of boys and girls who actually struggled with porn. Because I'd always just assume that like it's only guys that do that.
Yeah.
But like almost everyone can get addicted to it,
Yeah.
which was quite surprising.
And then something we also wanted to talk about was just the age group, because I think teens are probably most affected by it, like you
Yeah.
said, because of your hormones, and you were exposed age 12, 13. But I was doing some research and it was actually very, very scary because of the internet and the fact that we all have like access to internet. I mean, kids have tablets at like ridiculously young ages.
Yeah.
That it is most, because I was obviously reading up on it, and it says most people will have been exposed to some like pornographic image by the age of 8.
Yeah.
So
No, it's true. I mean, that's the thing. Like when I was grade 6 or 7, I had a cell phone that was a black and white cell phone, and there's no internet back then. So, I mean, there was, but it wasn't anything you could Google or anything.
Yeah.
And so for me, my access was only watching a TV. Once my parents had gone to bed, I would sneak out to the lounge and put a TV program on where I'm like, I know ETV, late night, there's going to be something. And so I had like, I'd say it was more difficult for me, but like I would find a way.
yes.
Whereas nowadays, teenagers, kids, they're all getting their phones and everything with full access to Wi-Fi, everything, like at such a young age. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was like that.
Yeah.
So it's crazy just to think of how much access there is
Yeah.
to people these days. Because I mean, I was even talking about someone on Instagram. There's almost always a way that you can find your way
Oh yeah.
to
Yeah.
a porn picture
Easily.
from any picture on Instagram. Like if you follow the hashtags, you will eventually get to a point where you can find something.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's just crazy how easy it is to do that. So,
Yeah. And I also find on Instagram, and I think Twitter is also really bad, but on Instagram, often you'll get those accounts that kind of contact you, or like they comment on your post saying, hey, follow me. And if you click on their profile, it's like, whoop, I should not be watching that. I should not be seeing that. So yeah, it's very easy to be exposed. And I actually also wanted to ask you on your opinion on like movies, right? Because like I was speaking to Devin about it the other day, and he said like even if you don't watch porn, like you're always exposed to some kind of thing that could kind of trigger it in your mind. So do you think like maybe more like graphic sex scenes in movies or series or whatever, do you think that can also trigger those feelings? Yeah,
100%, because it's the exact same thing as porn. It's just, how do I say, it's commercialized porn. So it's like, it's
more
porn
acceptable.
but it's like
soft
it's the
porn, as
exact
they
same
say.
thing,
Yeah.
because the porn industry is naked people having sex. That's what you want to watch.
Yeah,
If you just put that in a movie and give it a good storyline, it's seen as this great movie.
that's true.
But it's like, it's the same concept. It's just one's got high quality scripts than the other one.
yeah.
So, and okay, most of the time in the porn industry as well, behind the scenes, there's a lot of sex trafficking and stuff like that, and people get hooked. And so there's like a very negative connotation, because there's a lot of negative impacts that industry actually has.
Whereas a TV show, it's like,
shows,
no, but they are actors.
yeah,
and
they're getting paid.
consented
Yeah,
to
so
it,
it's like you see that side of it. So it's like this battle. But I mean, if you're coming down to the desires and feeding those flesh desires that you kind of have, seeing the naked image is exactly the same as porn.
to trigger.
Yeah.
There's even certain movies where I have to skip the movie, and I can't even watch certain movies, because for me, those movies were so much of a trigger that if I watch a movie now, my mind goes, okay, I know what scene's coming up. It's like, so you have to be careful, because the content is still the same, really.
Definitely.
Cool.
You have a next question?
Yes. So why do you think that it is so common and so many people struggle with it, especially young people?
Well, I can't say exactly why, but I think one of the biggest things we struggle with as mankind and our sinful nature is our lust. I think it's one of the strongest desires we have. Because like for me, a large portion of me watching porn was a distraction and as a way to be loved unconditionally, because the girls were always there and they would never reject you. I was never the popular guy in school. I was always the short little scrawny guy. I never had girls flocking after me. So for me, it was like, here's girls that would always accept me. They're always there. I don't have to. So it helped me with my insecurities. But also, if I was really having a horrible time or something was going bad, it was an easy distraction where everything in that moment is like gone. And I can. So there's those personal things that it kind of helps. I say helps, that it kind of fills the same way people use alcohol and drugs to escape. It has those things as well. But I think the overall thing is that desire to connect with someone in a physical way is so strong that it's something that everyone will always struggle with. Like I don't look at cocaine or in a movie and go, oh, I really need cocaine. You know what I mean? Not that I've seen it in real life, but I'm saying like, I don't have those desires. I don't ever long for drugs. But someone else might have that trigger. Whereas I can watch a movie with a sex scene and all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, I desire, and it triggers something. And it's that desire that I think it's so strong in every individual. And that's why it's such a difficult thing, because non-believers are going to hear this and they're going to go, well, it's a natural thing. It's a desire. So you can just enjoy it because it's nice. Whereas from a biblical point of view, we're saying, okay, but it's something to be saved for marriage, because there's so many other implications to it as well. Because it is such a personal thing, you want to share that with one person. And so you got this battle of, physically I want this, but I know that I must try and leave it for my wife. And so, it's just such a strong desire in a person.
I think you just kind of brought up the whole Christian versus non-Christian thing. And I think one thing that I've always... well, not necessarily always, but more recently felt, because I was kind of always of the perception that like all non-Christians were like fine with porn, and Christians, like we just didn't like it because, you know, it's like, But then like just reading more into the nature of the pornographic industry, it is like the amount of abuse that goes on in that industry, like sex trafficking, whatever. Like I just don't see how anyone can be okay with it. And also something that I feel like a lot of people do is they kind of make out like, oh, it's empowering for the women because they get to make their own money and all that kind of thing. No. And I'm like, first of all, the industry is controlled by men. So no, it's not empowering. And like you're still kind of appealing to like...
mostly a male audience.
And so like you're already contributing to continued objectification of women, sexualization of women. And like, it's just not empowering. But I also, one thing that I wanted to ask, do you think it's possible to have like ethical porn, if you know what I'm saying.
I don't think there's any way to have ethical porn, and that's why even regardless of Christian or non-Christian, like you're saying, the industry objectifies women.
Yeah.
So it's not about empowering women to say, yo, women can then do what they want with their body, because all you're doing is creating an environment where women feel, and you're trying to encourage them to say, yo, but this is you empowering your body, like you taking ownership of your body,
Yeah.
where you're actually creating an environment where they are objectifying their own body.
Yes.
So you might not intentionally want to objectify them, but you're creating an environment where they are objectifying their body, because they are going, well, this is my body that I'm going to use for income regardless, and you creating that environment. So even if it's subconsciously or not, you are manipulating them into objectifying. And I think that's the huge thing, is the industry objectifies women, and it becomes, because there's no emotional connection.
And I think that's what I was going to say, is it makes, like, it removes any sort of emotion from sex.
Exactly.
So it's, you don't know the person, they'll never show you any feelings or any behind the scenes.
And you don't go for coffee with them. You don't, like, there's no communication.
There's
It's just...
it essentially makes sex just this thing. It becomes a negative thing when it's really not.
Yeah. And there's no way that you as a person, so let's just go from a male perspective, there's no way you as a male can be okay with porn and then claim to really be respectful towards that woman and really hold them and protect their integrity and really not treat them as an object when you are endorsing pornography. There's no way that you can look at a woman and go, you know what, you can do this if you want, that's okay. And like, there's no way that you're saying, I really hold you in this high esteem and I'm looking after your best interests and your integrity, because by doing that, you're not.
I think I heard about the study or whatever that they did with men, and when they see a naked woman or like a woman who is like scantily dressed or whatever, they don't see her as a person, they see her as an object. And I think for me that's one of the worst outcomes from porn, because I don't believe that humans are created like that. I think that's like, obviously we have like sexual desires because we need to like procreate and all that, whatever, but like when it comes to the objectification of people, and where you can't look at a woman or even a man really, because I mean you know, anyone can be like that, and you don't see a human and you see an object, like that is just not a thing.
That's the hardest part for me, and that's what filled me with so much guilt and shame through my teenage years, especially when I was in high school. I knew that because of my desires and acting upon it the whole time, I knew that I was objectifying women. And so to me, the guilt and shame came from seeing a woman and actually immediately my brain turning into an object. And like, that's what really broke me the most. Was like, I was so sick and tired of being this person who sees a woman and I literally don't see past the physical appearance. And for me, that was a huge part of what filled my heart with like guilt and shame nonstop.
100%.
And I think a lot of people will say, but like, I don't, like, it doesn't have that effect on me kind of thing, because I don't see women any differently. But the reality is there is nothing ethical about the like pornography industry. Like, there have been women that have come out, and by all means it looks like the sex is consent and she's enjoying it, but the reality is most of the time, or not most of the time, but sometimes it's people that have genuinely been forced into those positions. And also like child pornography is a huge industry. And I'm talking like Blake Lively did a speech that I've watched a couple of times and I cry almost every time I listen to it, because there's porn and essentially rape. I mean, having sex with anyone under the age of 16 is rape, of like kids that still have the umbilical cord attached.
What?
Yes, there is material out there like that. And so there is no, like, under any circumstances, like, the reality is if you're supporting one facet of pornography, you're supporting this very, very big, very, very dark industry.
Because
I mean, I'm sure there's stats. I saw something just the other day on it, where the industry, the amount of money coming in from porn is almost this, it's like 4 billion compared to the 4 billion that was coming in from, I can't remember, there's some other business industry, and it was the exact same thing, where porn was almost like the exact same as this country's income. And I was like,
that is
it's
wild.
mad if you look at the income. And people are like, yo, but I don't pay for porn. I just watch the free stuff.
Yeah,
It's
like,
like,
you're
no,
still
but
contributing.
it's contributing because
Yeah.
those people are getting paid for how many views they get on their video.
Exactly.
They're not getting paid just from you paying. There's
Yeah.
other ads, other things. So the whole industry. But you're saying like ethical porn. I suppose what would be considered as ethical porn, not that I consider it that way,
Yeah.
but like in the movies. So when you're seeing those naked scenes in a Stir Kinnickor movie or Netflix, that would be ethical porn because it's porn by definition, by naked people having sex on
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
But they're getting paid, they're choosing it, their acting career. So it's very difficult to actually separate them completely because it's the same thing, really. It's just the
Yeah.
one industry, I'd say, is less, how do you say it?
Messed up.
Yeah, but even that, it's like if you
Yeah.
read, I mean, this is the whole Weinstein and stuff that happened. I
Yeah.
mean, that industry
How
isn't
ethical is it?
doesn't it's not completely detached from these things
No,
either. So
not at all.
yeah,
I think what's always like really scary to me is just to look at some of the most searched things on Pornhub, for example. And I mean, like child pornography is right up there. Like people want to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But even messed up things like brother and sister
yeah,
or
or
whatever.
like bestiality.
It's just
yeah.
weird. I'm sorry. Like,
But-
it's just weird.
The reality is, and that's why what I wanted to talk about was the effect that porn has on your brain, because like it's a drug. It's addictive. I think it's very hard. I mean, I wouldn't know, but for me, it's hard for someone to watch porn and not get addicted.
Yeah,
And it's the same way, like if you take cocaine and it releases dopamine into your brain, but every single time you take it, you need to take more to reach that same high.
yeah,
And it's the exact same with pornography. And so you're literally like rewiring your brain, and any psychologist or psychiatrist or medical person will tell you how unhealthy porn is for you in general.
yeah.
And that's why I think the other day I was upset. I was telling Danielle before this. A friend of mine went to a psychologist and just said, like, my boyfriend's watching porn. I'm not okay with it. And her psychologist was like, well, you're not having sex with him until marriage. So, like, no.
Yeah.
No. You're literally ruining, like, any form of,
Because
like, future intimacy.
what it does is it's the same thing. Most people who go into like those weird strands of porn, they don't start there,
No.
but it escalates.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's
you
why, like, if
need
you
more
if
to
you look
reach
at
that
some of the
same
studies
high.
that they've done with serial killers,
Yeah, Ted Bundy.
yeah, it started with the unhealthy, not that there is any healthy, but a seriously unhealthy addiction to pornography,
Yeah.
where it escalated to such a point where videos weren't doing it anymore, and then he would start to rape girls, or even just
Yeah.
see if he could, and then he would, and then he was like, no, but the rape wasn't enough, so you'd have to kill them, and there's actually a link to the psychological impacts that pornography has.
Just watch Mindhunter, guys.
Yeah, I watch that
Like,
hectic stuff.
It'll tell you, like,
Yeah.
the reality is, like, you're sitting at home and you're watching porn, you're listening to this, and you're like, oh, but it's not that bad. I promise you
Yeah.
that almost every serial killer has some sort of experience or
Yeah.
origin in porn. Like,
And
it's a reality.
It's also like the porn and stuff, when you watch it, it trains your mind to also think that one woman isn't enough.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it actually, whether you like it or not, it trains you to constantly, okay, another woman, because it's essentially going to be like another woman every night that you're going
Yes.
to. So eventually when you find the one that you love and you get married and you're like, cool, this is the one, it's going to have implications on you when you have to be intimate with your wife, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, but
But
what
it's the
happens
same-
after a while, it's like, okay, but this is the same woman.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
something else. And then that's where the problems come in.
Yeah.
And there's
So
tons of
sad.
stories of people who are actually, they can't even be intimate with their wives
Yeah.
because of how serious porn has changed their mind, that they cannot actually just be intimate with their wife.
Yeah.
They just can't.
Yeah.
So,
I also think it paints, like, the reality. I mean, I've never had sex, as I've established so many times on this podcast for some silly reason. But I feel like everyone is just always turned on and oiled, and it makes sex, in quote unquote,
oiled.
it makes sex
From
look
chicka bow wow.
it makes sex look like this super, like, raunchy,
Yeah.
like, easy thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
The girl's always just ready to go.
Yes, and it's like, I feel like if that's what you've always thought, and then you're about to sleep with a human being that does not look
Yeah.
like,
Or act like.
you
Yeah.
Yeah.
know,
Because they're selling a product, essentially.
exactly. So I just feel like it's just not good for any sort of future relationship.
No.
Nope.
Okay, so before we continue this discussion, we just want you to stay tuned
To the end.
because we do have a big announcement to make. I won't say it's like a special announcement. It's just a big announcement about our podcast.
Mm-hmm. Very
Stay
exciting.
tuned, Clive.
I'll be here.
Good.
Okay, so I think we also just wanted to talk about a Christian perspective, although I feel like we have
A little bit,
definitely touched on it. But why, especially as Christians, porn is
A no-no.
a no-no.
Well, I mean, I think we have basically covered
Yeah.
that. I mean, morally, you want to be sexually pure for your spouse. And it's because you want to save that for marriage, because it is such an intimate thing. It's a personal thing.
Yeah.
Like when this Bible speaks about becoming one flesh, that's literally the physical intimacy that you share
Yeah.
with your spouse. And there's also studies that have been done that when you share physical intimacy with an individual, there is an emotional attachment that forms at
Whether you
various
like it or
degrees.
not.
Whether you like it or not, there's an emotional attachment. And the more you do that, the more you're spreading these emotional attachments with others. Whereas instead you want to save as much of that emotional attachment as your spouse, or with your spouse.
Yeah.
But it comes down to the objectifying of women as well. And it comes down to fueling that desire of the flesh. That's
Yeah.
and once that takes hold of you, because if you give in too often and you then become addicted, that then takes hold of you in your life.
Yeah.
You walk around with that guilt and the shame hanging over you because you've constantly given in. You start to see people and have relationships with women based on this objectifying relationship
Yeah.
that you already established. So it's
Yeah.
you establishing habits and things in your life
Yeah.
that is actually going to hinder you, regardless of whether it was just porn or not. It's hindering you with your relationships and in everyday life
Yeah.
because of those objectifying women and those type of things. So
Something that I recently heard that I was like, wow, was a lot of people will tell, like, especially Christian guys, because that's generally the stereotype, will say, like, I know it's hard to wait, don't go to porn, like, it just, when you get married, like, you'll be able to have sex. And it's like, it kind of equates, like, porn and sex in, like, don't watch porn because when you get married, you're just gonna get to have sex all the time kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which also isn't the case. And then it's also makes, like, your wife becomes an object almost.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's like,
Or
now
you
I
can
no
just
longer
do what-
need
yeah.
porn, so now I have someone, but you're still
yeah.
objectifying them.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
I don't like that narrative of, like,
Yeah.
stay away from porn because when you're married, you get to have sex. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not
But I think it's
about
also
it.
because the church isn't open to talking about it with each other.
I think that's
So
why
there's no
most
real-
kids actually get into pornography.
Yeah.
Is they're
Yeah.
so curious about sex.
And there's no real conversation about it. There's no openness in saying, yes, he's going to struggle. It's also, it's seen as this one thing. It's like now, almost like you've been condemned as soon as you've done it.
Exactly.
It's like, you're not condemned. We make mistakes. We all know the struggle.
Yeah.
We've all been there. Like, that's why for me, I'll never judge someone who's struggling with porn because I know the struggle. I've been there. So it's like, you can't look at someone and be like, oh no, you're an unbeliever now, you're going to hell. It's like, it's
Yeah.
not that black and white, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, there's struggles that we go through. This is one of them.
Yeah.
But as long as it becomes this hush topic, then it's not going to get dealt with. I mean, it's always going to be there, but it's not going to really help the teenagers or help the guys or the girls who are struggling with these things if we don't open up and talk about it. But as long as
Yeah.
there's a shame, it's just a silent thing, and then it just escalates
Yeah.
because there's no real support or help for the people.
That's true. I think so. Lastly, I think,
Yes.
yeah. What would you, like, what advice would you give to people who are battling with the pornography addiction? Like, how did you manage to, like, mostly get
Stop.
over it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what boundaries have you had to put in place and stuff?
So, you see, like, I never had my own computer and stuff with internet and things. So I never had the same exposure as people today. So the boundaries people have now would have to be very different to what I had.
That's true.
So for me, it was a matter of literally just going to bed and just trying to fall asleep as quickly as possible so that, like, I'm out. I'm not going to wake up in the middle of the night and go to the TV and go watch TV and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, in my high school time, my parents also got an alarm system put in, so I couldn't just go to the TV
yeah.
without putting off the alarm, and
Yeah.
they would know. But biggest things is like with your phones and stuff, there's tons of software that you can get where someone who you trust, hopefully your parents, they can have that software that can actually see what sites you're going on. I think that's a phenomenal thing. I wish I had that when I was, especially in high school, and then I started to have phones that could have internet. Really getting that software would be the key thing, to just try to remove as many times you're exposed to it as possible. Because I think the problem is that it's really so easy, like really easy. So it's like, it's just so accessible that it becomes too easy to do it. You kind of want to make it as difficult for yourself as possible to even experience, like really engage with that stuff. Because you always will in some way. I mean, the movies will always have it, so there'll always be the temptations, you always go, but really try to make it as difficult as possible to actually access that type of stuff. And then get people who you trust to hold you accountable. Open conversations, talk about it. I started a group with 2 of my other friends, and we called it Accountability Bros. And literally we would talk about it. But it can't be a thing of just, hey, y'all, we all struggle. Yes, it's like a cool club. It's like, no, how are we going to stop this, you know? And being a believer, spending time in prayer, worship, talking about sharing scriptures with each other, that genuinely helped me a lot. In fact, there was the moment I was sitting in one of the worship sessions at one of our youth meetings, and I was sitting at the back, and I just burst into tears because I was like, God, I'm so sick and tired of this. And that was the first moment where I could actually just put it behind me. And yes, there were moments of relapse, and yes, there were times where I would struggle, but it's this conscious effort of saying, you know what, I'm going to do whatever I can to not do this going forward. I mean, there's even moments where even now I feel so tempted. I mean, I don't even go on Instagram anymore because there was just so many moments of temptation where there was always, because I follow a lot of like fitness people, there's always like these fitness girls, and it's like they wear the most tightest, smallest stuff. I'm just like, okay, let's get rid. So it's not to blame them, it's just that for me personally, these things are triggers.
Thank you for saying that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's like there's this, everyone would go, oh no, but they shouldn't be wearing this, they shouldn't be. It's actually, it's not a trigger for everyone, and it's a trigger for me, so I need to make the conscious effort to put things in place for myself.
What a man.
But it is these things. And like even to today, if I'm walking somewhere and you go to the beach, there are naturally going to be things that are going to keep your attention, and you're like, okay, I have to learn to bounce my eyes and look the other way because it's always going to be a struggle. And that's the one thing, is that sometimes people speak about it as if like, no, but you must just get over it, and when you get married it's going to go away. It's like, it's not. The struggle will always be there. It's how you handle that, how you react, what is your response. So to put things in place, put good habits in place that can get rid of those things. But it's difficult. I think the biggest thing is having people for accountability, being open about it, because you have to talk about it. If you don't talk about it, everyone's just going to be like, I'm sure someone along the line struggles with it, but not like me. And it becomes this personal thing, but you're not supposed to do life by yourself alone. So like, talk about it. And if you have these conversations, don't judge anyone. And if there's parents listening to this, when you talk, but really be open with your children and talk about it. Talk about your own struggles. Don't just say, hey, I know that you're probably struggling with this, how can I help you? Talk about when you were a teenager and struggling with it, because that's what they need to hear. They need to hear that you are also going through these things, or have gone through these things.
You're human.
Exactly. It's like, and that's the worst thing, is like when people assume, I know, but no one does it, or you must just get over it. It's like, no, we are human. We will struggle. There will still be times of relapse in the future, but we need to move forward. We need
I think
to help.
that's what's hard, is like, let's just say like you've been okay, and then one day you're not. I feel like it must be so discouraging to be like, okay, now I have to start over again.
It is, because I had to keep telling myself, okay, today's day 1. And then I'd go through like 7 days, and I'd be like, I made it a whole week. And for me, that's a huge thing, because like, it really was a problem. And then you have this relapse, and you feel so defeated. I would struggle to even read my Bible, because you're sitting there like, how can I possibly just go and read my Bible and do a quiet time now when I've just done this despicable thing? But if you had to go and maybe let out a swear word, or you go and you do something like that, or maybe you were a bit greedy that day, or maybe you're coveting what someone else has, you will go sit and read your Bible. But when it's coming with this, it's like, no, how can I possibly come before the Lord now? And that's where the guilt and shame comes, which we need to really try and eradicate, because we are all human. I mean, I'm a qualified pastor and I still make mistakes. Like, people must understand, Christians do sin, and Christians make mistakes. And we're not perfect, and it's how do we get past that without the condemnation and the shame and the guilt. So
I follow this page on Instagram called Fight the New Drug, and it's just about pornography specifically. And I would highly recommend like everyone goes to follow it, because they put out a lot of research and facts about it, like how it affects your brain, your relationships, etc. But what's also nice is that they quite regularly put out like tips for people who are struggling.
Wow, okay.
And like one of the things that they say is often like what your brain is looking for, like some kind of dopamine rush or whatever. So like go and have a walk, go for a run. You know what I'm saying? And like another thing is often like it creeps up on you like when you're bored
or tired,
whatever. And then you need to think like, okay, I'm home alone right now. Maybe let's just go into a public space. Let's just like let those feelings out. So you just need to figure out, well, from what I can tell, it's not easy, but you need to figure out like what exactly you're looking for, and then like figure out ways to combat those reasons. Like you need to look at the root of it.
And like I have friends who just will not bring electronic devices into their bedroom ever. And like for me, I'm like, no, I love to have my cell phone with me and chill in my room. But if it's a struggle, then you have to be.
But it's exactly that, and that's why I think it's also. Sometimes teenagers as well, they feel like, oh no, but if my parents have this software on my thing, or they don't want to let me have my phone in my room, it's genuinely because the parents know the struggle and they want to help you. It's not like
they don't trust you.
No, it's like I don't trust me. So it's like, you know, it's like this type of thing. Like I wish, looking back, my parents are amazing, but I wish they did take my phone away. Or I wish they did have software, but those things weren't there when I was struggling with this stuff. So like, and it was a very hush-hush thing. You would never really talk about these things with your parents. I mean, I remember talking, the first time I actually spoke about my struggle with pornography and masturbation and stuff like that in front of my dad was when I went on like a church camp with another church for men. And the men they were talking about, from the church, were actually talking about how as long as their child's not really sleeping with someone, it's okay for them to look at porn. And I was like, and I was like this little youngster, and I was like, I cannot keep quiet. And I was like, no. And I just spoke up, and I was talking about it, and I was like, this is what my struggle was and everything. And my dad just sat there, and I was like, oh, yeah, by the way, Dad, this is my struggle, because I'd never spoken about it. But I wish I had. But it was not the culture. And I think that's what needs to change. There needs to be an openness to talk about it.
Definitely.
But just reiterating what you said, and just in case that this episode hasn't already let you know, pornography is just not good for you, y'all. Not even if you are a non-believer. Like it is gonna mess with your mind. If you don't believe me, go and do research.
Indeed. But I think we've pretty much covered all of this.
Yes.
Cool. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I think we covered it all. One thing I do want to say though is
we covered it all back.
No, but the one thing that pornography they also have found is that it brings about aggression in people as well.
Yeah.
Because most of the porn that you watch, it's not as slow and sensual.
Like
it's a very aggressive, dominant thing, and they find that actually helps. Well, not helps, but it makes people more aggressive outside because of. That's the way it is. So, also something to be careful of.
So, I'd say if it is something you're struggling with or something you sort of really see a problem with, like, just think about, like, what the whole institution is.
Yeah.
Like, the kind of people who are involved with it, what the people are actually going through. And you might say, oh, but people are doing it by choice. But, is it really a choice?
So many people.
You know,
if you don't know if it's a choice.
Exactly.
You will never know. Someone may look so turned on and happy.
But it's because you're trying to justify the reason you watching it. So it's not like you're trying to actually do your research and find out that specific actress or actor. It's you trying to justify why it's okay for you to do it.
And even if it is consensual, like it's still contributing like predominantly to the objectification of women. And I don't think anybody really wants to be doing that. So just think about those things. And also reach out to people.
Please.
And so many people are struggling. You're not the only one.
Even girls. I feel like girls are like, no, it's a guy issue, so I'm weird if I'm struggling with it. But I've had many girls tell me.
A lot of girls struggle with it more with the erotica books, like literature.
Yes, there's a ton of that out there.
But it's so like it's you're reading the romantic relationship and that stuff, so it's a bit more in depth. So it becomes more of a personal thing, and then
it's quite interesting actually. If we look at if you just look at the difference. I mean, I don't read like erotic novels, anything like that, but I do know things. But if you look at the difference between the things that are made for men versus women, so like often for men, it's it's visual. Yeah, it's very visual, but it's also like much more intense, like, oh, you just want to see the girl naked kind of thing. But often with women, it's much more intimate. So if you compare movies, for example, movies that are made for the male gaze, it's like, okay, naked woman right over there. But like movies that are made for the female gaze is very much focused on like sensual things. So like
gaze
a man
is in like eyes upon you gaze.
Yes.
I was like, for the male gaze,
the male homosexuals,
naked woman. I was like, that doesn't
No.
make sense.
Sorry. I forget that not everybody like knows the term. That's funny. But yeah, it's often like focused on like hands and like eyes kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Which
you're
can
still,
be just as
you're still
dangerous.
eliciting anyway the same emotions.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Okay, we're really going to end now. We
Yes.
do have a big announcement, Danielle.
So basically, our next episode will be our last. For now, we're taking a break.
We don't know how long it's going to be, but you have 30 episodes to watch. No one
Yeah.
who's listening to this has listened to every episode unless you're Janie Murray.
So now you can.
So yeah. But thank you so much for joining us.
Cool.
And
Yeah, that's all.
bye!
Goodbye. Thank you.
Cheers.